my people, how you doing? I hope you're having a goddamn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we will be replicating and recreating the Julian Nagelsmann system at Bayern Munich. Of course, recently there have been rumors linking him back to the job in, obviously, Munich, which I think could be a very solid, very good fit. I mean, as a Manchester United fan, I don't want it to happen, but if Ten Hag were to get sacked, I would absolutely want the likes of a Julian Nagelsmann to replace him. So he is a very, very good manager. We've seen it over the last few months as well, the way he's, turned Germany around, got them playing really good football. So it makes the most sense why the likes of Bayern Munich, of course, they've also restructured their board, why they would want to go back to a Julian Nagelsmann. So, of course, more so, in his time at Bayern, they played a 4-2-3-1 system that would also shape up into a kind of a 3-4-2-1 or a 4-3-2-1 system as well, depending on how you see it, of course. So that's the more offensive style of play and the way that they look to try and shape up when in possession of the ball, when they are trying to exert themselves on the opposition. So we will be discussing both systems in this video. Of course, as per always, if you guys do not mind smashing that like button down below, subscribing if you are new, let me know down below, if you are a Bayern Munich fan as well, would you want a Julian Nagelsmann back at the club? The reasons he left in the first place were kind of weird because from an outsider's perspective, Julian Nagelsmann was doing a sensational job, incredible, from beginning to end, and then all of a sudden he got fired and Tuchel got brought in, and it kind of fell off after that, to be fair. So yeah, anyways, you guys can let me know though down below in the comment section. Anyways, let's hop on straight into the goddamn video. So taking a look at the base formation, I've only made one change to the 4-2-3-1 wide, and that is the left-sided DM has now been converted into a central midfielder, and that is, of course, the Goretzka role. Of course, a bit more of the box-to-box play with Kimmich looking to try and dictate the pace of play. But otherwise, there's been no other changes to the formation at hand. So therefore, it would be one goalkeeper, two centre-backs, two full-backs, one DM, one central midfielder, two wider midfielders, one attacking midfielder, and then, of course, one striker. Taking a look at the tactics. Now, the tactics do shift and change depending on, whether you're in the more offensive, style of play or the more balanced approach. And I will also say this, I did recreate and replicate more or less the same set of tactics under Nagelsmann, but for Manchester United. And I will also say this, the tactical vision was set to, I think it was set to kick and rush. Now, that was because of the personnel in the Manchester United side, and I was trying to more or less adapt it and whatnot. But for the Bayern Munich side under Nagelsmann, I would associate wing play and that tactical vision a bit more with that, Bayern Munich side that Nagelsmann inherited and how he wanted them to play and whatnot. So, therefore, wing play is absolutely going to be essential for the style of play. In terms of the defense and the defensive style, of course, pressing off to possession loss is going to also be essential. Looking to win the ball back nice and high up the field, looking to turn it over, create those high transition moments, the fast breaks and whatnot. So you want to try and win the ball back very aggressively, making it very uncomfortable for the opposition to play in those central areas. You want the likes of a Kimmich and a Goretzka being very proactive, reactive, engaging with the opposition, looking to try and win the ball back, as well as, of course, the forwards. As for the team width, it's set to 40. Now, this does flare out a little bit more with the more offensive, style of play, but it's set to 40. You still have that man-v-man system. You still want to be very aggressive in those, situations where you're matching up with, one of your opposition players. But at the same time, slightly more zonal. A slightly more compact zone, you could say, as well, looking to try and cover in those central areas, as well as also being able to prevent crosses and all that good stuff when they are fired into the box, or when they are attempted to be fired into the box, I should say. In terms of the depth, I've set this to 75. Now, this allows for a nice high line to be, implemented. It helps with the possession-based style of football that Nagelsmann and Bayern were trying to create at that time. And it also, helps push the midfield nice and high up the field. It creates overloads as well. So it just helps quite a bit with the actual base style of play. In terms of the offense, the build-up play that I've selected is slow build-up. Now, this, of course, will allow for the centre-backs to show for the ball, progress, get nice and slowly through the final thirds. It also will allow for the likes of a Kimmich to be able to get on the ball, generate the offense, have the midfield ticking over very efficiently, very effectively. But at the same time, I will also say this. You can look to aggressively and, a bit faster or a bit pacier. With a bit more haste, you can look to move the ball a lot quicker through the lines, whether, you know, there's a fast break opportunity, whether an Alphonso Davies is combining very nicely with Gnabry or a Musiala down the left-hand side. So you can also look to abandon the slow build-up play and move the ball a bit quicker through the lines as well. That's what I'm trying to say here, if I'm making sense. You guys can let me know, though, down below. In terms of the chance creation, now set this to forward runs. This will obviously encourage your midfield as well as your forwards to get nice and high up the field, creating overloads, creating, you know, space between the lines as well. And more so, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to overwhelm the opposition in their own half at times. As for the width, I've set this to 70, and again, it does flare out with the more offensive, you know, version of these tactics. But more so, you are looking to try and create those combination plays down the wider channels. Now, I will say this, the right back and the right midfielder in Sane and Mazraoui, at the time, it could have been a Stanisic, it could have been a Benjamin Pavard or a Nianzou as well. I really do like Nianzou, currently playing for Sevilla. But the right back and the right midfielder wouldn't overly combine. There was a lot of combination played down the left-hand channel between a Davies as well as a Gnabry or Musiala or a Coman, for example. So you want to, you know, still have that out wide, pulling players out of position, opening up a lot of space for a Choupo-Moting, a Robert Lewandowski at the time as well, a Thomas Muller, to potentially fit between the defenders and create havoc and maybe create a few goal-scoring opportunities. In terms of the players in the box, we've set this to 7. You want to have at least 3 to 4 players, sometimes even 4 to 5 players in and around the attacking area, looking to overwhelm them in their own box at times. Onto the corners and the free kicks. As always, it is set to 4. Okay, guys, so taking a look at the individual instructions, starting off at the back with Manuel Neuer, and I will also say this, the instructions don't change too much, obviously with the other system as well. They don't overly change, so you will be seeing quite a few similar instructions and tactical, you know, insight into the different individual player instructions. So, for the likes of Manuel Neuer, of course, you are playing a high line, so you need him to be able to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. Of course, Manuel Neuer is essentially the keeper that revitalized the sweeper keeper, you could say. I mean, I know there was Valdez at Barcelona, but Manuel Neuer is, when I think of like the best sweeper keeper of all time, in my personal opinion, I think of Manuel Neuer. I think he is up there with the GOATs of you know, football goalkeepers. So in order to replicate his role in this side very successfully, you want him to be a sweeper keeper and, of course, come for crosses. As for your backline, of course, Upamecano, and it wasn't really De Ligt at the time. It was Sula, and of course, Sula's since moved on. But both are set to their base set of instructions. You don't need to make too many changes to that. But in terms of your fullbacks, now, Davies is the more attacking fullback of the two. And of course, Stanisic was the right back or again, it could have been a Benjamin Pavard. More of a centre back in that right back department, you could describe them as. But for the Davies role, you want him bombing down that left channel as much as possible, flying up and down the left wide space. So join the attack, overlap, and then stick to position. So onto your right back, of course, it could have been a Stanisic or a Pavard, like I've mentioned. But they didn't overly get too far forward. Of course, when in possession of the ball, you can look to manually push your right fullback higher up the field, driving down the right channel, or maybe even a bit more centrally into the midfield, creating overloads in the central areas of the pitch. But in terms of the run type, it's set to mixed, allowing him to, yes, invert if needed, or potentially also overlap the right back if required as well. And then, of course, just like with the left back, the right back will also be told to stick to position. Now, taking a dive on into the middle of the park, of course, you've got the likes of Kimmich. He's set to cut passing lanes. You want him to be able to have a bit more of a zonal presence to his game, looking to sweep up in front of that back four as much as possible. With the likes of Kimmich in this role, he didn't overly or always, stay back while attacking. He would, get forward. So therefore, I've allowed him to have a balanced approach, allowing him to, yes, break forward, create overloads higher up the field, and especially with the forward runs being set on, you want your double pivot at times, pushing nice and high up the field. And because he is set to the DM, he will push nice and high, but he will have a more natural, deeper position compared to the likes of a Leon Goretzka or whoever you have paired up next to him. The interceptions will be set to normal, and then of course, you want the likes of Kimmich dropping into the little half space, collecting the ball off of the goalkeeper restarts, or even off of the centre backs at times, and looking just to rotate it and create the rotation in the midfield, moving the ball swiftly, creating those little passages of play. You want him to be the conductor of the offense from deep, you could say. That's the best way to probably describe a Joshua Kimmich, if you ask me. The defensive positioning is set to cover the wing. Like I say, you want him to have that nice zonal approach, and if the likes of a Mazraoui or a Pavard at the time was to, tuck in a bit more, you would expect the likes of a Kimmich to try and, help him out in those wider spaces and trying to, prevent the crosses and win the ball back more so from the opposition winger or the fullback in those wider areas. As for the likes of Leon Goretzka, now I've made no changes to him. He's set to his base set of instructions. You want to try and create this, hybrid slash box-to-box type player where he's allowed the freedom to, bomb forward, overload high up the field, or potentially stay further back, help Kimmich in the double pivot role, shield the backline if required. So you want to have him, with his instruction sets to their base. Into your attacking midfielder, of course, the likes of Thomas Muller. I know that Musiala is an attacking midfielder, but at his time with the likes of a Julian Nagelsmann mainly used him on the wing, which was a bit weird considering the likes of a Tuchel is now using him a bit more centrally, and I think he's established himself in that central number 10 area, looking to be the natural replacement of a Thomas Muller. So we'll have to see how things pan out. Does Nagelsmann use him as an attacking midfielder? I think he might. Or we could see Nagelsmann reverting back to the fact that Musiala is going to be played out wide on the left-hand side. We could be subtly surprised. But in order for you to replicate the number 10 role very effectively in a Julian Nagelsmann system, you would want the likes of a Muller or a Musiala to drop a bit deeper, help support the likes of a Kimmich or Goretzka. Often, looking to drop into that back three, creating a very hard midfield to try and play between the lines as well. You also want the number 10 to be able to drift in and out of the box, on the edge of the area, creating rotating play, or in the box off of the shoulder of the striker, whether it was a Lewandowski, a Choupo-Moting, breaking into that attacking area and kind of trying to latch onto the loose balls in and around the box. At the same time, you also want your number 10 to be able to drift into those little half spaces, pulling players out of position, trying to create from those awkward areas of the field, or either trying to rotate the play into the best opportune areas as well. In terms of the interceptions, I've set this to normal. You don't really require it to be too aggressive, otherwise it can drain the stamina, and at the same time, you are also naturally going to be pressing the opposition when out of possession of the ball. As for your left and your right midfielders, also slightly differing roles as well. The likes of a Gnabry set to come back on defense, free roam, and come short. Now, what this does is it's slightly more, exaggerated with the offensive version of it, but you would want him to operate in the left half space, allowing him to almost play as a secondary number 10, allowing him to drift inside, combine with the midfield, interchange positions with a Thomas Muller as well. It allows him also to pull players out of position, also vacating that left-hand channel for the likes of an Alphonso Davies to bomb down. The interceptions will be set to normal, and then of course the support on crosses is set to balance, allowing him to, yes, drift into the box, be in those attacking areas, position himself to potentially score the goals, or he can look to try and facilitate a bit more, be on the edge of the area, whipping crosses, whipping, cutbacks, and hopefully try and create something for the striker. As for the likes of Leroy Sané, also set to come back on defense, looking to try and help support the likes of your right back, but at the same time, the chance creation is very different to the left midfielder. He's going to look to try and hug the touchlines, and what this does is it'll try and pair him up in a 1v1 situation with the opposition fullback. And of course, Sané is very good at taking on his fullback because he's got that quick burst of pace and speed in his arsenal, and he can look to try and exploit the opposition by also breaking in behind. So you also want him to, again, use the speed to your team's advantage by consistently penetrating the opposition's backline from that right space. As for the interceptions, just like with the left midfielder, it's set to normal interceptions and then, of course, a balanced crossing run. And then finally, we've got the likes of a Harry Kane or a Choupo-Moting or even a Robert Lewandowski. So in order for this system to be a success, you need them to stay central, be the focal point, the linchpin higher up the field, the guy who's going to hold up the play, link it up very effectively with the creative playmakers in and around him. At the same time, you want him to use his physicality to your team's advantage, so you would require a Kane, a Lewandowski, a Choupo-Moting to back into the opposition, win the aerial balls, knock it down, because essentially the likes of a Muller, you could argue, is very aggressive, very physical, but a Sané, a Gnabry, a Musiala, they aren't overly, super aggressive with how they play. So you want to have at least one focal point, one, strong figurehead in this offense that can help, do these, different elements of the game. So essentially, the likes of a Kane or your striker, just in general, they will have to do this for your side. The interceptions will be set to normal, but he will also more naturally press the opposition, trying to win the ball back, forcing errors, forcing, misplaced passes and all that good stuff. And then, of course, for the striker, you want him to be the outlet ball for a potential counterattack or anything of that sort. Okay, so taking a look at the more offensive version of, the base formation, more so the exaggerated positions that you would want each individual player to try and take up. Now, we spoke about Mazraoui staying back and inverting in certain moments, of course. Pavard and Stanisic would invert into a back three system that more so the likes of a Nagelsmann was more comfortable with playing. He played it at Hoffenheim, he played it at, RB Leipzig. So he has, at that time, he was very accustomed to playing a three-back system. Whereas with the likes of a Bayern Munich, he saw that they had so much success with a 4-2-3-1, so he's quite happy to use that. But in the builder play, when, generating the offense, they kind of did revert into a back three formation with the likes of a Davies and a Sane, almost playing as the wing backs or auxiliary wingers, you could describe them as. So yeah, you want to try and, create this formation or use this formation when you're up against a very stubborn opposition, trying to, stretch them a bit more, trying to open them up, trying to create a bit more offensive outlet for your side. That is the best way I would suggest to you guys to try and use this set of instructions. Okay, so for the formation at hand, I've selected a 5-2-2-1 system and I've altered and changed a few positions. Of course, the wing backs have now been converted into wider midfielders, and the left-sided DM has also been converted into a central midfielder, of course, the Leon Goretzka role. But otherwise, no major changes to it. So therefore, it would be 1 goalkeeper, 3 centre-backs, 1 DM, 1 central midfielder, 2 wider midfielders, 2 attacking midfielders, and then, of course, 1 striker. For the tactics going forward, there are a few, just improved or more offensive favoring outlets. The tactical vision is still set to wing play. The defensive style is still being set to pressing off to possession loss. It is more essentially, you could say, when out of possession of the ball with this set of instructions, set in play, you want them to aggressively win the ball back nice and high field. And that is shown with the defensive instructions. A slight bit more flair to it, stretching the defensive shape a bit more. We're looking to try and definitely match up in a man-v-man type situation. And at the same time, the depth is also set to a slightly higher line, set to 85. And this does help with piling on the pressure onto the opposition, forcing them and pinning them back in their own half at times. As for the offense, it's still set to slow build up as well as forward runs, and then of course the width, again, slightly more flair to it, slightly more wider, generating a bit more space between the lines, generating a bit more space more centrally, because essentially you are fitting in 4 midfielders. The players in the box is now set to 8, allowing for exactly 4 players to be in and around the attacking area, trying to overload the opposition box as much as possible. And then, of course, the corners and the free kicks, as always, are still going to be set to 4. Okay, so taking a look at the player instructions, of course, Manuel Neuer, he will still be set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. As for your back three, of course, Upamecano and De Ligt are set to their base set of instructions. With the right-sided centre-back, of course, it was a Stanisic, or like I say, it could have even been a Nianzou, or even a Benjamin Pavard. And then eventually a Mazraoui, of course. A slightly differing role. He was allowed to drift in and out of those central areas as well, looking to overlap or just, step into the midfield and push the likes of a Leon Goretzka slightly higher up the field, allowing for overloads to occur. So in order to replicate that role very effectively, you can either set it to overlap, and that will allow him to combine quite nicely, quite effectively with the likes of Leroy Sané, or you can allow him to join the attack, and that will allow him to be a bit more, or it will allow him to step into the midfield a bit more as well, like I say, forcing the likes of a Goretzka higher up the field. So you can play around with either an overlap or, of course, a join the attack. I like overlap as it will allow for the likes of Sané to get a bit more support down that right-hand side. As for your midfield, speaking of which, we've got the likes of a Kimmich as well as a Goretzka. So for Kimmich, he does have a slightly different role. He's still going to be set to cut pass lanes, but because you are playing a back 3/back 5 system, you can allow for your DM to now effectively drop between the defenders, and this will help with the goalkeeper restarts, as well as just making sure that his natural position is quite deep, the deepest lying midfielder you could say and describe him as. Because again, with the goalkeeper restart, you're going to expect the likes of a Kimmich to collect the ball off of the back line, or even the goalkeeper as well, and obviously look to try and, you know, rotate and run that midfield. As for the likes of a Goretzka, again, no major changes to his natural instructions, all set to the base set of instructions. Into your wider midfielders, now Davies and Sane do have slightly differing roles, but there is very similar attributes to them. Come back on defense for both of them as well. Stay wide for the likes of Davies, get in behind, as well as, you know, stay on the edge of the box. You don't really want your left back being able to break into the box. He can do this, but you want him to generate quite a bit of space down that left-hand side, and more so be a potential secondary crosser back into the box. So you want him to consistently hug the touchline and not really arc his runs as much. Whereas the likes of a Sane, for example, again, come back on defense, stay wide, and of course get into the box. But, sorry, not get into the box, get in behind. But you want him to be able to arc his runs, getting into that attacking area, being that extra man in and around the back post areas, waiting to latch onto a loose ball or something similar to that. Okay, so as for your two number 10s, essentially the likes of a Gnabry with the likes of Davies pushing so far high and wide, you want the likes of a Gnabry to drift inside. Now this could be a Gnabry, a Musiala, a Koeman, even a Sane as well if you're looking to have Sane as a bit more of an inverted forward. So both will have the same set of instructions. Come back on defense, a balanced approach for the crossing run, so drifting in and out of the box at times, as well as having the free roaming role. Very similar to how Gnabry was, you know, set up for the base set of instructions, with him being that left midfielder, allowing him to come inside, have that free roaming role, pick his pass, pick his moments, open up the little spaces for players to, you know, operate in and around him as well. And the same goes for Muller on the right-hand side, also looking to drift into those wider channels if required, looking to try and support the likes of a Davies or even a Sane. And at the same time as well, with the set of instructions in play, you want your number 10s to be very aggressive, provoking the opposition into a mistake or a misplaced pass, or turning possession over in your team's favor. As you'll see for the likes of a Muller, he's got the same role and instructions as well. And then finally, we've got our striker, who again, the instructions don't change. Stay central, target player, normal interceptions, and then of course, stay forward. So there you have it, guys. That is how I would replicate and implement the Julian Nagelsmann system into the Bayern Munich side in FC24. Of course, as per always, if you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to leave a like, a comment, subscribe if you are new to the channel, and all that good jazz. Out of 10, I would give the system a 9.5. I absolutely love it. And low-key, that's why that's what I would have expected the likes of a Julian Nagelsmann to do at Manchester United. So if he does go back to Bayern, I'm really happy and excited for them, because he will definitely, you know, level them up, and it'll make the Bundesliga, you know, it will have that crazy good title race. So hopefully we can see that from next season if the likes of a Nagelsmann does rejoin Bayern Munich. And it is very exciting, especially if you are a Bayern Munich fan. So you guys can let me know, though, down below. Would you want him back? What would you rate the system out of 10? And, of course, as always, until the next time, until the next one, I hope you have a goddamn great day, and I'm out.